The nation was shocked by the crimes that Moore's killer, Myra Hindley. She has been vilified as Britain's most evil woman. 5 innocent children were kidnapped, sexually assaulted, tortured, and killed as a result of her participation. Hindley had a very normal childhood until she met a guy named Ian Brady, who transformed her life into one of evil. They would have continued their killings when one man, David Smith, witnessed the brutal killing of their 5th and last victim, Edward Evans, on October 7, 1965. Edward was invited to Ian's house for gay sex, and Ian asked Myra to fetch David Smith, who joined them. David Smith is dating Myra Hindley's sister Maureen. They got married and moved close to Myra and Ian's place. The 4 of them spent a lot of time together, and David was impressed by Ian's perception of life. Brady was confident that the young guy could keep a secret and be actively involved in their murderous plans. After the killings, David went back home and told Maureen everything. Equipped with a kitchen knife, they went into a phone booth and called the police. They stood there until the police arrived. David told the police everything he witnessed. The police then went to Myra Hindley's house and searched the place. They made a gruesome discovery with Edward Evans' body. Brady was immediately arrested, and Myra was questioned by the police and allowed to go home. David insisted that there were more murders in the house and that they should search thoroughly. The police found out that they'd murdered Leslie Anne Downey, a 10-year-old kid from the area who had been missing for 6 months. They found a suitcase that contained a photograph and tapes recorded of Leslie. David told police that Brady is telling a joke about burying children in moors. They also found a photo of Myra in the moors, and so they started digging the place. Myra was charged and arrested afterward. The 4 missing children were thought to be buried in the vast, eerie moors, according to the police. On October 10, 1965, they discovered Leslie Anne Downey's body. John Kilbride's body is also found 11 days later. John disappeared on November 11, 1963. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley were sadosexual killers who became addicted to torturing their victims. They found pleasure in stalking, trapping, and killing their targets. In Brady and Hindley's case, children were their preferred target. In a world of factories and terraced homes, Myra Hindley was born on July 23, 1942, in the underprivileged working-class neighborhood of Gordon in Manchester, England. Her grandmother, who took her after her parents had their second child, raised her, and she was raised by a loving family. She was the class's brightest student. The young boy, Michael Higgins, was one of Myra's friends. They frequently hung out together, and she nearly took care of him. A local reservoir was where Michael wanted to take Myra one sunny afternoon, but she was unable to go. Tragically, Michael drowned, leaving Myra traumatized. Myra started to distance herself from humanity and hide behind Catholicism after the unfortunate event, blaming not just herself but also all the other people. Myra stopped attending school when she turned 17 and eventually found work as a typist secretary at Mill Woods, where she met Ian Brady. She ignored him for months, though. Mary admired and was fascinated by Ian because of his good looks and impeccable attire. In her diary, she recorded how Ian looked at her or ignored her. Ian Brady is already involved in some crimes as a teenager. Despite Brady being bisexual, he and Mary fell in love and began to follow his twisted philosophical theories. Mary stopped talking to anyone and ignored her friends because she only wanted Brady. He also persuaded Myra that there is no God, and as a result, she stopped attending church. Brady also mentioned to Myra that rape and murder provide the greatest pleasure. She did not wonder why her and his personalities had merged. Brady put Hindley to the test at the beginning of 1963 by telling her that he needed her to be his getaway driver for a robbery. Then, Myra started taking driving lessons, joined the neighborhood rifle club, and bought weapons. Grady's goal was ultimately achieved even though the robbery never happened because Myra had proven to be a reliable accomplice. When Myra pulled up and asked Pauline Reed if she could help her look for a glove, Pauline was on her way to a dance. Myra then drove Pauline to the moor, while Ian Brady followed behind. Grady then sneaks up behind Pauline and strikes her, killing her and assaulting her sexually. John Kilbride is the next victim. He entered the market but never returned home. There were posters of the missing kids all over the place. Brady is typically following on the motorcycle when Mary makes the first move. 6 months later, they chose 12-year-old Keith Bennett, whom they lured to Grady's car by calling him in an alley. He is taken far into the moors. He was murdered by being strangled and then buried in the middle of a moor. Grady and Mary had, by that point, moved into the home of her grandmother. After another 6 months, they picked up Leslie Anne Downey at the fair. This time, however, they took her home and took some pictures and tape recordings of her. The recordings heard Leslie pleading to let her go home. At one point, she even called Hindley Mum. They took Leslie up to the mountains and buried her the following day. Even in the face of strong proof, Mary and Grady continued to deny the accusations. They claimed that David Smith had invited Leslie into their home for a photo shoot before David and Leslie safely departed. John Kilbride's connection to Grady and Mary was sufficient evidence to bring charges against them. They discovered his name written in Grady's handwriting in his notebook, as well as a picture of Mary near John's grave. 7 years after ending all communication with Grady in 1970, more than 10 years after she was imprisoned, Hindley started a crusade for her release, which she carried out until the day she passed away. Grady was ready to serve his sentence and never applied for parole. The crimes committed by Hindley and Brady are despicable, and leave permanent wounds in the lives of their victims' families and friends. Even though Hindley was sentenced to life in prison, their actions cast a long dark shadow over British society. To this day,